All right, welcome to our training this afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Iris Wen. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the FRC training coordinator. Today, we are continuing our spring special education training series with Disability Rights California. This is the second of 4 special ed trainings that we'll be hosting between now and May. And you can check out our upcoming events in our event calendar. This afternoon, we have Maria Uriarte and Mary Rios from Disability Rights California to talk about letter writing for special education. First, we want to briefly talk about what the FRC does here in San Mateo County. We serve families who have children with disabilities between the ages of 0 to 22. We are staffed by parents and caregivers of children and young adults with disabilities, and we provide support, information and resources, and referrals to navigate the systems. We also offer trainings, support groups, a resource finder, and a monthly newsletter. I want to give a disclaimer that the FRC is not a legal firm or a legal services agency, and we cannot provide any legal advice. Any information provided by the FRC should not be considered a means of taking the place of legal advice that must be obtained through an attorney. With that, we invite you to connect with us, and we'll put our contact information in the chat. I also want to introduce our FRC team who is here with us this afternoon. We have Patricia Udrugo, FRC Supervisor, and Denise Tinoco, FRC Bilingual Coordinator. Next, we'll go over some general housekeeping items just to make sure our training runs smoothly this afternoon. We will be recording this training for any families and providers who are able to attend. So we ask that you please mute yourself when not speaking to avoid any background noise. You can have your video on or off based on your preference and comfort level, and please be respectful throughout this training. As mentioned, we are offering simultaneous interpretation in Spanish today. So if you haven't already, you can select the language that you would like to listen to this presentation in the settings bar. Under the globe icon, you can click on this and select either English or Spanish. We will have a Q&A portion at the end of the training. Please save your questions for the end. We encourage you to take notes and write them down as they come up so you don't forget them. You can use the chat box or raise hand feature for questions and comments. We encourage you to refrain from sharing any names or detailed information to protect your privacy and other families' privacies. And after you ask a question, please be mindful of making some pauses to allow our interpreters enough time to translate both the question and the answer. At the end of the training, we will be distributing a survey both in English and Spanish to collect your feedback on how this training went. It will be anonymous and just helps us to understand how we can improve our trainings for you all. And we will be sending a follow-up email tomorrow with the materials from this training. I also want to note that the Spanish version of this presentation will be available in the chat, and you can click on the file that Lonnie will put into the chat, and then it'll save a copy, and you can reference this throughout the training. Okay, and that's it for me, so I'll turn it over to Disability Rights California. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Iris, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening's training on letter writing to special education. We'll shortly share our packet on the screen, and like Iris mentioned, you can go onto the chat and you'll see letter writing in a PDF format, and feel free to go ahead and download that copy. We do ask that if you put anything in the chat, as far as to your question, to keep it at a minimum so that no confidential information is recorded. You can unmute later. We will turn off the recording and you can ask your question then as well. We'll also read off the chat. But for those who don't know about our agency, I just wanted to share a little bit about us. We were formerly known as Protection and Advocacy. We are a nonprofit organization founded in 1978. We are federally mandated to provide legal services for people with disabilities. The issues we work on can range anywhere from special education, public benefits, regional center services, housing, employment, and so on. We have offices in Sacramento, Los Angeles, Bay Area, and San Diego. And then we also have smaller offices in Fresno, Ontario, and Modesto. So again, today, our senior attorney, Maria Arti, and our senior advocate, Mary Rios, will be speaking to you about letter writing. Thank you.
Anyway, here we are. Letter writing when we're dealing with special education. So we are going to go through some points to consider. And as you see here in the table of contents, we're going to show you some sample letters about different topics, maybe requesting an independent educational evaluation. And we'll talk about what that is. A letter to revise the IEP, or a letter to request records, or about asking for compensatory services or a reasonable accommodation, etc. And we're going to give you a list of resources on the internet and additional resources. So when you are considering writing a letter, let's say you don't agree with something and you're thinking about writing a letter to the district or to the school about an issue with your child in special education, one thing that you might want to do is find out from the district if they have any alternative dispute resolution processes. Schools do, and you just need to find out what they are. These are different ways of trying to resolve issues. But it's not the same thing as filing a compliance complaint or going to due process or filing a complaint for discrimination. When you are contemplating using the district's alternative dispute resolution process, whatever it may be, just know that the time all of these remedies, compliance complaint, due process, discrimination issues, complaints, they all have deadlines for filing these things. And so if you're going to enter into and try to resolve the matter with the school district through their alternative dispute resolution process, the time is ticking on these other things. Just because you're trying to resolve it with the school through their own process doesn't mean that the time stops for you, for example, from filing a compliance complaint, for filing for a hearing, which is called due process, or filing a discrimination complaint. It's also important to know what your remedy is regarding your issue. Is this a compliance complaint? Is this an issue where the school is not following the law? So, for example, a good example would be if the school is not providing a service in the IEP, because the law says that the IEP is a contract between the parents, student, and the district. And the district is to provide what is in the contract, what is in the IEP. So when the school is not providing a service that's in the IEP, then that's a subject of a compliance complaint. Or when you've asked for an assessment, and the school is taking a long time for the school to even respond. Well, there are deadlines for the school to do an assessment. The school's not following the law. And so that would be the subject of a compliance complaint. A due process is when you're going to go to hearing. And there are three topics that are for due process for going to hearing. One is when you're not in agreement with the placement. Let's say that the school wants to put your child in a special day class and you want the school to provide teaching in a general ed classroom with supports. You and the district are in disagreement. That is an issue to go to a hearing. The other one is eligibility. Let's say that you're told that your child doesn't qualify for special education. Well, you're going to take, and you're not in agreement, you're going to go to a hearing for that. That's due process. The other thing is when you've asked for a service, for example, and the school is saying no, where there are issues with regard to services, not when the service is already in the IEP, because when it's in the IEP, they're supposed to give it to you, and when they're not giving it to you, it's a compliance complaint. You ask for a service, they deny it, or they don't give you as much as you think you need, your child needs. That would be subject of a due process. Now, discrimination, it comes in various forms. Let's say that your child uses a wheelchair and can't access the desk in the classroom. And so as a reasonable accommodation for your child, you've asked the district to provide an accessible desk, and they deny it. Seems like a reasonable accommodation. Well, that would be discrimination based on disability. So denial of reasonable accommodations. The other type of discrimination is just blatant discrimination. So let's say your child who uses a wheelchair is told that he can't go, that his classroom is going to an outing. They're going to go out to the mountains and look around and walk and have a picnic, but your child is not going to be able to go because he uses the wheelchair and he won't be able to access the trails. That is direct discrimination, blatant discrimination because of your child's disability. In chapter 6, I don't know what chapter, I think, yes, chapter 6, we have a manual called Special Education Rights and Responsibilities Manual. And in chapter 6 of that manual, we go into detail about compliance, complaint, due process, your hearings, and, discrimination issues and where to file a discrimination complaint, the timelines for all of this. But from this slide, I want you to take two things. The district may have an alternative dispute resolution process separate from the things you see down here in number 2. Secondly, just because you're trying to resolve the issue through the school's alternative dispute resolution process doesn't mean that the time for filing a compliance complaint, due process, or a discrimination complaint stops. It continues as you're in the alternative dispute resolution process with the school. Now, when you are considering writing a letter, and we always say, do everything in writing, whether it be a letter, whether it be an email, because you want to have a paper trail. You never know when down the line you're going to need to refer to something, and it's hard to refer to a conversation that you can do that, but when you're corresponding with the district through email or letters, it's just a lot better. So things to consider. First, you need to decide who you're going to send the letter to. Is it to the teacher, to the school, the district? We always say yes, always the district. The special ed director. Decide who you want to send the letter to. Always keep a copy of all the letters you send to the school and any letters, emails, whatever that you get from the school. Each letter should contain the date, the child's full name, the name of the teacher or current placement, your address, daytime phone number, and the best time to reach you, because you may be someone who, you work 9 to 5, and maybe the best time to reach you is during your lunch break, from 12 to 1 or whatever it is. Or maybe the method of reaching you. Perhaps it's better to reach you by email than it is to call you. State why you're writing the letter, give background information as needed, and then state what you want from, what is the goal of sending this letter? What is it that you want? Sometimes what I do is I start my letters by what I want, and then I go into what happened, right? This is what happened. I attach any emails or letters in support of my letter that I'm sending out. And in the letter, if possible, you want to also include the law, the regulations, anything that supports what you're asking. And the law can include timelines. You're supposed to be doing this by within 30 days. 60 days have passed, according to this law, 60 days have passed and you haven't done anything. By the way, that would be subject of a compliance complaint because the district is not complying with the law. So chapter 6 of our SIR manual talks a lot more about the, and you can access it here, these 3 things, compliance complaint, due process, and discrimination issues. So what we're going to do now, and I'm going to give the mic, so they say, to Mary, and we're just going to go through some sample letters so that you could see the format. We're also going to talk about, just some of the subject matter of the letters so that you can understand the law. So Mary, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Maria. Hello, everyone. So the first sample letter that we're going to cover is a referral for an assessment. So let's say, for example, your child is attending school and you notice that he or she is struggling in terms of their academics. And you want to, again, like Maria said, you want to put it in writing. You want to address it to the school and CC the director of special education. Include your child's name. And here in the sample letter, it says, I'm writing to refer my son Max for assessment to determine if he is eligible for special education services and support. He is not progressing in school. He is 7 years old and attends Harvey Milk Elementary. And you want to indicate the school's name. If you believe that your child may be eligible under a specific category, let's say, for example, here they've identified other health impaired, emotional disturbance, or autism. It could be a different type of disability. It could be because they have a specific learning disability. They have a different type of disability. You want to indicate that on the letter, and you want to be as specific as possible. What the school does is they basically do a standard special education assessment, and they look at the following, which is indicated on this letter. They look at cognition, psychological processing, and academic. And then here, if you scroll down further, it indicates some type of different, the different assessments that they can conduct. But depending on the evaluation that you're requesting, here, for example, they've identified an occupational therapy assessment. You want to include that if they're having difficulty, let's say, for example, using their hands with writing, you want to indicate that on the letter. But we also think it's very important that if it is your first request for an assessment, you may want to include in the letter that you are also requesting that they either do a 504 assessment or have the 504 coordinator present at the first IEP meeting. And the reason you want to do that is if they do not qualify for special education, they may qualify for a 504 plan. Or if they qualify for special education and they may need some reasonable accommodation, like Maria mentioned, the 504 coordinator can make suggestions depending on the student's disability. So you want to put your request in writing. The school district, once the parent or somebody makes a referral for special education, the school district has 15 days to provide you with an assessment plan. And once you receive the plan, and we'll go to the next slide, and it shows you an example of an assessment plan. It indicates whether it's the initial assessment, the annual, triannual, whether it's a transition, an interim. It has the information, which is parent or guardian of, the student's name, the date, school district, the name of the school, grade, birth date, primary language. And if this is a referral from, for example, a parent, a nurse, teacher, it indicates all assessments plans, they all have their own, all the school districts have their own assessment plan, but they contain the same information. So down at the bottom, it indicates the type of assessments that are going to be completed. Here it says academic achievement, health, intellectual development, language and speech. Some may be checked off, some may not be checked off. If you feel it's important that the child be assessed in that specific area, you may want to check that off. Or let's say, for example, you're requesting a specific assessment. Let's say you're requesting an assistive technology assessment because a child may need a communication device. You want to check on other and indicate the type of assessment you're requesting. On the right side, it indicates who the assessor, the examiner will be, or the person that's doing the assessment. Down at the bottom, it indicates whether you agree or disagree, and you sign the assessment. But here we think it's also really important. There's the parent signature. Under comments, it's always really important to indicate for the school district to please provide you copies of the assessment reports at least 5 days before the IEP meeting. And we think it's very crucial that you include this request because you don't want to wait for the IEP meeting for them to bombard you with all the assessments, not giving you an opportunity to review the assessments. So you definitely, again, want to put in writing that you're requesting copies of the assessment reports 5 days before the IEP meeting. So next we have a sample letter for an assistive technology evaluation. And here we made it very specific. Again, you want to include the school, your child's name, the school district, and who it's regarding. Here we're requesting an assistive technology evaluation for an augmentative communication device. And many times the school districts will not let the parents know, especially when the children are just starting in school, in special education. Let's say they're transitioning from the regional center or just starting school. If the child is nonverbal, it's always good to request an assistive technology assessment. They may benefit from a communication device, and we think it's really important that they do the assessment. So here, again, you can request an evaluation by a non-oral communication specialist. They may be able to identify a specific evaluator. Again, you want to put everything in writing. Here, again, it indicates that the school district has 15 days, and you want to indicate that. I look forward to receiving an assessment plan within 15 days, and it, like Maria mentioned, it indicates the educational code, so you want to include the ed code. Many times when we're doing trainings, we hear that the school district tell parents that they're not supposed to, or they're not attorneys, that they shouldn't cite the law, but that's not true. Parents have the right to include that. Maria, and I'm sure you've heard that as well, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's not practicing law.
Right.
So yeah, you can absolutely. And in fact, if you do that, they're going to probably pay more attention than when you don't do it, right? Because now they're thinking, okay, they know, right? And we can't pull a fast one here.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. Show that you know.
Yes, thank you, Maria.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you want to indicate that, you look forward to receiving the assessment plan, and include your information. You can reach me at, your telephone number. You may want to include your email address. It's important to get things in writing, and put things in writing. So let's say that the school district does an assessment. They do the initial assessment. And they indicate, for example, that based on their assessment, they feel that the student is not eligible for special education. Parents have a right to request an independent assessment, not only because they're not eligible. Let's say that you're requesting an OT assessment or a PT assessment, and based on their assessments, they're indicating that the student doesn't qualify for such service. Parents have a right to request an independent assessment at public expense. And here we have a sample letter. We have just received a psychological evaluation for our son Max, which was completed by district personnel. We disagree with the findings and recommendations of this evaluation, and you indicate that you are requesting an independent evaluation. And it cites, like Maria is pointing out here, the California Education Code. The district has two options. They can either approve the independent evaluation, or if they deny, they have to provide parents with a prior written notice, and they would actually have to initiate due process and show that the assessment that they completed was an appropriate assessment. Many schools prefer approving the independent education evaluation. And again, the school districts, may want you to may provide the parents a list of evaluators. You have the right to select somebody that you feel comfortable with. You do not have to select somebody on the list that the school district provides. So that's really important to know as well. Here it indicates that the evaluation did not provide enough information on which to base services or placement recommendations at the IEP. The school district results are at odds with other testing done on your child, so clarification is needed. And again, it cites the federal regulations, and they have to respond without unnecessary delay. That is really important. Yes,
Yeah,
Maria.
Mary, I just wanted to add, some of you may be thinking, how am I going to find the law? Well, look at our SIR manual. Our SIR manual is, the format is question answer, and the answer will always cite the law. So you'll get a lot of the law by just looking at our SIR manual in the subject area that is of interest to you.
Thank you, Maria.
And if not, call us, get a hold of us.
So here we have a sample letter, which is a request for an IEP meeting. Again, you address it to the school. You can CC the school district. When the parents request an IEP meeting, here it indicates that they are the parent of Eric Chow, who is currently enrolled in 5th grade at Cesar Chavez Elementary School. In the special day class for students with learning disabilities, and they're requesting an IEP meeting to be held as soon as possible, but no later than 30 days from now, pursuant to, again, California Education Code Section 56343.5. Just know that the parents have a right to request an IEP meeting. The school district should hold an IEP meeting within 30 days. And indicate why you're requesting the IEP meeting. You may disagree with the placement that the student has. You may disagree with, or maybe the student is not receiving a specific service. You want to indicate that on the letter. You want to indicate the reason why you're requesting the IEP meeting. You may have concerns with goals and the goals that are written in the IEP. You may want to have the school district change some goals that are appropriate for your students. So you want to indicate that. And again, putting everything as writing is really important. So here we have a sample letter of a requesting a revised IEP for them to revise the IEP. It's addressed to the director, you can include the principal as well, the school district. I am the parent. of student, the name of the student who is currently enrolled. Pursuant to California Ed Code, I am requesting the district hold an IEP meeting for the students so that we can review and revise my child's IEP as soon as possible. It indicates despite his or her existing IEP, the student has been having problems at school. And it could be, you know, many times we get calls from parents whose child is either being bullied at school. You can address that in an IEP meeting as well. Let's say, for example, you want the school district to implement a safety plan to address the bullying. You want to make sure that it's included in the IEP. So again, if you want to revise the IEP, if you want to the district to include some additional goals, different services, you have the right to request that IEP meeting again. Here it indicates that they're requesting, so here it indicates a 30-day timeline, but it also indicates, so it indicates a 30-day timeline. They have 30 days to respond to you with an IEP meeting. It also, the parent in this case, or the example shows that you are available either in the morning, afternoon. You want to identify the time that best meets your need. You may want to give the school district, sometimes they'll come back and say, we're not available. Give them different options. They should meet at a mutually agreed upon time and date. Here it indicates I plan to record. So when the parents have the right to record the IEP meeting, as long as the parents put in writing to the school district that you plan on recording the IEP meeting. You have to notify the school district within 24 hours before the IEP meeting. So you want to make sure that you put that in writing. Sample request for records. I think this is a really important letter. Parents have the right to request records, the entire CUME. You can request evaluations, IEPs. The school district has 5 days to provide parents copies of the records, and we're going to talk more about some additional, like for example, Maria's going to talk about a compliance complaint. It's really important to know that if the child is not receiving the related services, for example, speech therapy, occupational therapy, let's say, for example, they don't have a speech therapist, you want to request copies of records, including service logs. The service logs basically indicate the services that have been provided to the student. So and Maria is going to talk about the compliance complaint, but I think it's important to have these records. Or say you want to request records because you're preparing either a compliance complaint or due process. Know that you have the school district has to provide records within 5 business days. And again, it's required by California Education Code, and it's listed on here, 49069 and 56504. You know, many times school districts want to charge a fee for the copies. We've included, I believe that in the next page, there we go. I cannot afford to pay for the copies of his records. Doing so would effectively prevent me from receiving copies of these records. So if you have, you know, you may want to include something, a sentence basically indicating that if it's a financial burden, you want to address that as well. That would reduce the amount of time for them to provide you the records as well. So you definitely want to put it in writing. Here, we've included this letter to the director because many times we have also heard of parents that are not getting responses from the school itself, or you have concerns and you're requesting for the director of special education to be part of a meeting, or you're requesting a meeting from the director. Here you may want to write a letter directly to the Director of Special Education if an issue cannot be resolved at the school, at the IEP team. So here, there is a sample here of the letter that was written. My child is a student at name of school. Name of student qualifies for special education services as a student with, you want to include the diagnosis, or you can just say disability. My child has an IEP. I attended an IEP meeting for my child on the date. I met with, you want to be as thorough as possible in terms of who participated in the meeting. And at the meeting, we discussed, explain what the IEP team discussed. And keep in mind that when you're putting a letter together, let's say, for example, you have the IEP meeting, and we know, like Maria said, it's a contract between the parents and the school district. You want to make sure that whatever it is that the IEP team says they are offering the student, that it is written into the IEP. If it's not written in the IEP, it doesn't exist. It becomes your word against their word. So you want to make sure that it's documented in the IEP. And again, if there is an issue that is not being resolved at the IEP, you want to put it in writing. Request a meeting with the Director of Special Education. Requesting, so what we did here is, so there was, in one example that I will talk about, is I spoke to a parent whose child had not received education for over 6 months because they were supposed to have been on what's called home hospital. And they didn't provide the teacher for over 6 months. So I recommended to mom that they write a letter requesting an IEP meeting and to include that they were requesting compensatory services. You can write a sample letter here. Here we have the sample letter. Basically, it says that you're requesting an IEP meeting. And here in this case, it addresses the speech services that weren't provided. But if your child is not receiving a related service, again, you can try to resolve it with the district before you either file a compliance complaint. I think it's good practice. Many times the issues are resolved if you address it with the Director of Special Education. In with the mom that I spoke to, they provided her with compensatory education for her son. And she received a number of hours of speech and also some additional um, teaching hours for her child. So again, I think it's important to try to resolve it with the school district. You don't have to take that route. I think I recommend it because many times it can be resolved at the school district level. And not only that, again, you're putting it in writing. And if that doesn't work, you have the letter to submit with your compliance complaint if it's not resolved with the district. So here we have a sample of a reasonable accommodation request. It's addressed to the Director of Special Education. Again, the student's name. You can also address it to the director or the program specialist. And here in this case, they were requesting home hospital for the student due to the student's health issues. And the school district did not want to provide the home hospital. And again, it doesn't have to be home hospital. This is just an example of a request for a reasonable accommodation, but identify what the reasonable accommodation request is. Let's say, for example, like Maria mentioned, the field trip that they were going to go on. If your child needs a reasonable accommodation, say in that case they need a one-to-one aid to assist them with either maneuvering their wheelchair. you can request reasonable accommodations. It could be there's many forms of reasonable accommodations that you can request, but in this case, they requested um, a reasonable accommodation at home, home hospital, related services at home, accommodations and or modifications as needed. Um, so this is a sample letter that you can look at, but I think the most important thing is identifying each individual issue based on your child's needs and putting it down in writing, making sure that everything is documented is really important.
And Mary, I know that there are websites where parents can find out based on the disability what types of reasonable accommodations there are, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Doing a search, they have lots of information. There's also, let's say, for example, the student has difficulty with reading. There's assistive technology and other reasonable accommodations that can be provided and or modifications. So it's based on individual need, but I think addressing the reasonable accommodations that are needed.
Yeah, really important to tell them what it is that you want. Sometimes
Yes.
you may not know, but that's something that could be discussed, right? And
Yes, and I
yeah.
think it's a matter of having that discussion with with the IEP team.
Mhm.
They have a lot of experience. Many times they won't disclose. Some of them do. Some of them are very creative in coming up with reasonable accommodations based on the student's individual needs. So I am going to turn it over to Maria to talk about the compliance complaint.
Thank you, Mary. So we talked about compliance complaint earlier in the presentation. These are complaints that can be filed with the California State Department of Education when the school district is not following the law. So for example, parents are part of the IEP team. And if the school were to have an IEP meeting without the parents, that would be in violation of the law because the law says that parents are an integral part of the IEP team. Not providing services that are in the IEP, that's a compliance complaint. Let's say that you go to due process and you win your case and the school is supposed to do things, but the school is not doing those things in the decision. That would be subject of a compliance complaint because the schools are supposed to follow the decision. So this is a letter that is being sent to the California State Department of Education. And what is this? This is a special ed compliance complaint. And this is the California Code of Regulations, Title V, starting section 46 that talks about compliance complaints. I feel that the local school district, whatever district it is not complying with state and federal education laws. My son is 7 years old. He attends this school. He has a developmental disability as well as a physical disability. Talk about the child and the problems that you're having. What is the school not doing that it's supposed to be doing under the law? And then you would list it here. The parent goes into detail about the district's failure to here. She never consented to a psychological assessment that was done by the district. When she did ask for a copy of the assessment, by the psychologist, they refused to give her a copy. They're supposed to give her a copy. So for everything that the parent feels was not where the school violated the law, the parent should note what the violation is. And if you have a citation to the law, then include it here as it was included in this letter. And it just goes on. And also include in a compliance complaint what it is that you're asking for. Those are called remedies. What is it that you want from the school? You want the district, in this case, to have access to the child's records, which the law allows the parent to do, to get consent before they do future assessments, which the school should have done. And so forth. So what do you want to resolve the compliance complaint. And so there are a lot of things here. And the parent in this letter included the IEP. Any documentation that supports the complaint that's being filed with the California Department of Education is important to attach with the compliance complaint. And so, please get a hold of me. Mom can even put, her phone number, the best number to call, or the best number, or the best way to reach her, the times. You want to give whoever you're writing the letter to, when you're awaiting a response, you want to give them all the information possible so that they can get a hold of you, right? Because the worst thing would be for them to say, oh, we tried to reach you 10 times and you never answered your phone. It could be that calling you via the phone wasn't the way to do it, right? But you didn't put it in your letter. So indicate the best way to reach
Maria,
you. Mm-hmm.
I was also going to add that it's really important that you include just the facts of what the issues are, because many times parents will want to include information that took place 2 years ago, which isn't relevant because in filing a compliance complaint, you can only go back 1 year. Is it, Maria? Remind me.
Yeah.
Yes, 1 year. So you want to make sure that you include the facts of what the issues are that you're dealing with at the present time.
Yes, I mean, you have a year to file a compliance complaint. You don't want to wait a year to file a compliance complaint because that's a year perhaps things are not happening for your child. So you want to file the compliance complaint as soon as possible. But you do have that year. And if you have multiple issues that fall within that year, you can file a compliance complaint for those issues. But like Mary said, if you want to talk about things that happened more than a year ago, where the school district wasn't following the law, you're cut off. They're only going to look a year back. This is a sample letter of a second attempt at contact. This is to the Director of Special Education. I'm a parent of a child enrolled in 5th grade. On such and such a date, I requested an IEP meeting for my son. And they have 30 days to have the IEP meeting. We've seen this section before in some of these letters. It's been now more than 35 days. I haven't heard from anyone, nothing. This is my second request in writing. This is my second request. Please respond to me in 5 days. If I don't hear from you, then I'm going to file a compliance complaint. Why? Why a compliance complaint? Because they should have held the IEP meeting within 30 days of the request and now it's past 35 days. But this is sort of giving the school a second try at getting this right before you file a compliance complaint. But the parent, in fact, has the right to file a compliance complaint on the 31st day because the school has only 30 days to have that IEP meeting from the date that the parent requests the IEP meeting.
And again, I think this is Mary. Again, I think it's helpful because if they don't respond to you within those 5 days, again, you have another letter to support your complaint.
Right. They ignored me the first time, then I sent a letter to the Director of Special Ed and she ignored me again. Yeah, these are attachments to your compliance complaint, these letters. Finally, we have resources. The Office of Administrative Hearings is the entity where you would file for due process for hearings. And so when you go to a hearing on a special education issue, remember placement, services, eligibility, your case will be heard by an administrative law judge. And there are on the Office of Administrative Hearings website, there are resources, including an attorney list if you're looking for an attorney. In fact, the OAH website even has decisions on different special ed topics. Let's say that you want to see what decisions have been rendered by administrative law judges on the issue of compensatory services. You would type in, you would go onto this website, look for cases. There's a section there for hearing decisions, and there's a search button there. You type in compensatory services, and then up will pop up cases that have been decided on the issue of compensatory services. It's informative. These cases are informative to teach you about the law, but also what facts helped the student win the case, or what was missing and why, what was missing that allowed the district to win the case. So as far as factual things, right? And there's an advocate list too that you can go to. And then just a list of special education resources that you can go to statewide. The Bay Area, so you've got, it just goes on and on. I really will just go Bar Association, State Bar of California. The State Bar of California has an attorney referral list. A program. You can call the state bar and say you're looking for someone to represent in a special education matter. They can give you the names of and contact information of attorneys. There are local bar, county bar associations too. And then let's see. And then it's by county. And then we've got the Office of Administrative Hearings, free or reduced cost special education attorneys. And so here's the list of attorneys. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go do this because the list is long, and you'll have time to look at the list when you get the material. And it's just, and then that's it. So we have come to the end of the presentation. We're happy to take questions, comments.
Sending out the follow-up emails tomorrow with the presentation and materials from this training, along with the survey and materials that Disability Rights will be providing for us. Okay, and that concludes this training. Have a great rest of your day.